Hello and welcome to Sounds on the Couch. I am very excited to introduce today's guest to you. Based in the Blue Mountains, while regularly being Sydney side as well, CJ Stranger is a singer-songwriter through and through. His captivating voice, tell all lyrics, and natural feel for his finger picking on the guitar work together in perfect synchronicity. We will be discussing his album release that came out in August this year called Hey Stranger. And I know you'll all be looking to find out more about the man that is behind the music. So I won't keep you waiting any longer. I will bring him up now. Hello.
Hey, Kaz. How you doing?
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So I guess if we just jump straight into the questions, would you be able to maybe just tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Sure. I live in the Blue Mountains. I've lived here for the last year or so. Before that, I was in the inner west of Sydney for a long time. And I've played music for a very long time. I work as a guitar player, like a session guitar player. So I've played in bands and done tours. And I've also worked in like theater pits. The last few years I've really started focusing on my own music and focusing on songwriting. And it's been a really interesting journey that I've really enjoyed. It's kind of come to fruition with this album.
Fantastic. And I guess it sounds like you've done so many different aspects of music as well. What was it that made you decide to go into a solo music career?
I actually got fascinated with songwriting and like what makes a song a good song and lyrics. I went through like a big, Bob Dylan phase, as I think a lot of songwriters do, trying to figure out what is it about his lyric writing that makes it so good, and a lot of other greats like Leonard Cohen and stuff like that. So I really kind of delved deep into lyric writing because as a guitar player, I'm always noodling around and fiddling. But I decided to really focus on lyrics for the last few years. And so that's been a really interesting journey. And that's why I kind of do this CJ Stranger thing.
Fantastic. And what have been the biggest lessons you've learnt through lyric writing?
That's a really good question. I've learnt to not compromise on lyrics. So I used to write from the guitar, but now I try and figure out what I want to say in a song first. And if you figure out what message you want to say and what you want to sing about, and then make the music serve that purpose, I find that the lyrics come out stronger and better, as opposed to the other way around, where sometimes you'll compromise on what you want to say just to make it fit music. So that's been a thing I've learned, is to try and do lyrics first, which has been a really interesting thing to check out.
Yeah, and I think that's a lesson that so many songwriters do need to learn. It's so easy just to get into the melody and the exciting playing your instrument. But yeah, so many experts that I've spoken to about songwriting always say focus on the lyrics first. And it's been a big lesson for me.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So I know you said Bob Dylan before, but who have been some of your biggest musical inspirations?
Well, obviously, as a guitar player, I grew up with a lot of guitar heroes, all the Hendrix and all those kind of guys. More recently, I love a guy out of America called Blake Mills. He's like a producer, guitar player. He's produced a lot of people, but also released some great records himself. I'm very influenced by his guitar playing style. In terms of songwriting, Kurt Weill and the War on Drugs out of Philadelphia. There's a lot of those bands kind of out of Philadelphia, which I really connect with over the last few years. So that's been like a recent one. Also like Australian artists, Paul Kelly and these, great Aussie songwriters. Courtney Barnett's like a modern example. I think she's awesome at lyric writing and storytelling.
Yeah, no, great. So would you ever travel to, or have you ever traveled to Philadelphia?
I have. I've been there for for a few hours. I toured in a band, playing guitar in a band in 2018, and so we toured all around America. and so I got to go to Philadelphia, and yeah.
All right, excellent. All right. So I guess going into your album release, so Hey Stranger was released in August this year. Are you able to give us a little bit of insight into what inspired you to put that out and to create that album?
Well, the album took a long time to be completed. It probably took 3 years from start to finish. So I worked quite hard on it, but I kind of worked on it in between other stuff that I was doing. As I mentioned, I did a bit of touring, so I was playing a lot of other music. But so I kind of wrote it all in the gaps, and some of it I actually recorded on the road. I recorded it at a whole bunch of different recording studios over 3 years, and then I kind of put it all together and mixed it myself, which was a really big learning curve, but it kept me occupied during lockdown.
And how do you find, if you did that over 3 years, I mean, in 3 years you changed so much as well. So how did you feel that does the album kind of display those changes, or did that affect what you were putting out by the end of the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think yes. I think next time I won't take so long.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
No, but the album, I think it holds together because it looks at all these different themes. It's kind of called Hey Stranger because it's about distance and about being separated from people, which is I wrote it all like long before COVID, but it's kind of relevant. Because I was away from my wife for some time when I was touring, and so I kind of explored that, like, distance and being separated from people you love, and so there's a lot of those kind of themes that run through the album. So as a whole, it holds together for that period of my life.
Yeah, no, excellent. And how do you find those relationships, like that relationship with your wife, is when you are a musician or when you are touring?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Like, it was the first time I experienced that touring, and it's definitely hard. It's interesting. People that obviously tour all the time, some really big bands, like somehow they must figure it out, because it's definitely challenging. And I think everybody obviously deals with it differently. I think, if I'm being honest, I probably didn't deal with it as well as my wife did. I think because when you're on the road, you're always moving. There's no kind of solid ground. You're always driving to the next gig or whatever. And so I found it a little bit hard. Still a great experience, and I'm really glad I did it. But we just had a baby who's 6.5 months old. So I don't think I'm not really keen to tour at the moment, apart from local Australian touring, Yeah.
Absolutely. And congratulations as well.
Thank you.
So would you be able to take us through maybe what the releasing process was once you'd finished putting together your album? How did the releasing process look for you?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting thinking about how to release music in this modern age, with streaming and all this kind of stuff. And so, like, people don't necessarily listen to records start to finish as they perhaps used to. And so I kind of considered that. And so what I actually did was I released singles gradually from the end of 2019 up until the album release. So I think I released 4 singles, which were all on the album. And I think it's a good way to do it in this modern era of playlists and all those other things that we have to try and get onto to get heard. I think it's an interesting one just to keep kind of drip feeding songs. And it also gives you more time to finish the final product, So I released it over a bunch of months.
Yeah. And how do you find the process now in terms of trying to keep up? I know that a lot of artists definitely feel that pressure that they have to be constantly releasing and constantly marketing and constantly putting out on social media. Like, how do you find keeping up with all of that?
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely changes so quickly. I did another album under my own name about 4 years ago, and it was completely different back then. Like, releasing only 4 years. Like, it was very different. Like, that was still like you put it out on CDs. People had only just started hearing about Spotify. It might not have even really been a thing. Maybe it was five years ago. Anyway, but now, yeah, it's different, and I definitely do find it challenging trying to put myself out there on the social media, because I don't find I'm very naturally good at self-promotion. So having like a publicist and stuff is helpful for that kind of thing. But also, with COVID and stuff, it all kind of changed anyway when I released the album this year. It's changed for all of us. And so that's been interesting. I have been able to do some gigs as, Sydney opened up a bit earlier than you guys were able to start doing some gigs and stuff. So I did a few gigs, did a launch, and I did a COVID safe festival, which was cool. Yeah, so it's been interesting. I don't really have like expectations of where my music goes or what it reaches, to be honest, anymore. I'm pretty much just with my own songwriting. I just try and make it as best as I can make it. It's kind of like my creative outlet, and it's really nice that people connect with the songs, because that's awesome. That's kind of what songwriting is about. So yeah,
no, that's amazing. And I think with so many people trying to put out the perfect song and trying to create that perfect song, it's nice to be able to enjoy the creative process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned as well how everything's changed with physical distribution, like with CDs and things like that. So do you see any value at the moment in putting out physical, like CDs or vinyl or anything like that?
Well, I actually did cassettes. You can't
fantastic.
see it very well, but so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, people, I can't even get it in the camera there. Anyway, I decided to do, I had that very dilemma. It's like, do I do CDs? I don't use CDs anymore. All my friends don't really use CDs. And then I was like, I'd love to do vinyl, but the upfront costs are pretty steep to get them pressed. I still want to do it for my record, but I just need to get organized. So I was like, what's an option that's kind of funky? And so I did cassette tapes. So I did 100 cassette tapes.
It's so creative. I don't see many people releasing cassette tapes, so that's great.
Yeah, it started to come back a little bit for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, it's something physical, and they can, even if it just sits on the mantelpiece, and they can listen on the internet, listen online, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how has COVID overall affected you with your release and with your music?
I don't know if I've been affected as much as other people. Obviously, like, not being able to do heaps of gigs or like a tour after I released the album was it would have been nice to be able to do that. But for me, for myself personally, it probably came at an okay time in terms of having a baby, like, and just needing to be home for obvious reasons. So for me, I haven't been that affected, and I've been really grateful with that people have been listening to it and purchasing it online, and so that's been really encouraging. But I suppose the big one is just being able to play live shows. It makes it more complex. I did a couple of the live stream kind of ones, which was interesting. So
So how have you found the whole live streaming and doing things online in comparison? Like, have you learned anything new through that?
Yeah, like, I think it can be a unique thing. And I think some people can access a performance that wouldn't be able to access it. So that's an interesting thing from anywhere, all over the world, and it's kind of forced the technology to improve so we can do that. At the same time, I think nothing replaces like being there in the person and hearing live music. There's something about that feeling of being there in community that is unique. So I look forward to that coming back in full force.
Fantastic. So if everything aligned for you in the future, what ultimately would you like to get to with your music?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd like to get to the point where it's perhaps I can spend more of my time on my own music, which is the challenge for all of us as original artists. So it's going to be a little bit more sustainable. That would be cool. But at the same time, I really enjoy playing guitar for other people's music and working on other people's music. So I'm quite happy, and I'm really glad I get to experience that, which is quite fun. So I'd like to be able to keep doing albums and keep improving my songwriting, keep sharpening the learning process, because it's like never ending, you know, with music. So just to keep learning and to keep refining how I write, and probably do some alternative projects at the same time, like something completely different.
Do you have anything particularly in mind that you'd like to try next?
Well, I study guitar a lot, and I'd like to do like maybe an ambient instrumental album, more of a like maybe a bit more jazz art record, just do something really different and creative.
Wow.
But
well, I can't wait to check that out. That sounds amazing.
We'll see if it actually happens.
Well, it's recorded now, so
I have to just lock me in. Yeah, actually, I just put out another single on Friday, which is not on my album. I wrote it straight after the album was finished, and it actually has the same name as the album, which is very confusing, and it wasn't intentional really. But it's just a phrase that came out. So I just put that out, and it's a little bit different to my album. I think it's a bit more indie lo-fi. I kind of did it all myself, which was a fun experience. So yeah.
Wow. So what inspired that new song?
What inspired it? I tried to have a go at writing like more abstract lyrics. So instead of narrative song, which I like to do a lot, like tell a story, I decided to try and do abstract lyric writing, which is where you just throw heaps of images at people and they can make, and it leaves it a bit more open to the interpretation. So if I suppose using painting as an analogy, there's like portrait, and then there's like abstract painters, you know, like Picasso or something, where it's just heaps of images and you're like, whoa, I need to try and make sense of that. So with the new song, that's what I tried to do with the lyrics, is not have a narrative, but use images. So it kind of references lots of different people in history, just throwing names out and making connections and letting people kind of decide. Maybe it's an excuse to not care as much about the lyrics, but I don't know.
I think that's very interesting. Like, I mean, you're such a creative person, and so, like, is this something that, like, do you paint, or do you have another kind of creative outlet that you do outside music as well?
Not really. Yeah, music's pretty much the only thing I'm decent at, I find. Although I'm interested in a lot of other art, but I don't really take to it myself. Like, but because I kind of do songwriting and then I do other music things, I find that's enough variation. And if I have a few different music projects on the go, that's good, in different styles and things like that. So yeah.
Fantastic. And so do you have hopes that your child is also going to be into the music and the creativity?
Yeah, well, he already seems to really love music. I play the banjo to him because I've been trying to learn banjo a bit. So he loves banjo. So I don't know, maybe he'll be a famous banjo player. I don't know. He can do whatever he wants. But he seems to love music already and gets excited when we sing to him. My wife's a music therapist, so she's very switched on with music stuff as well. So he's growing up in a fairly musical house.
And it sounds like that would help with her understanding with all your touring and your music as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have any future releases lined up to come out soon as well?
Well, I just put that one song out, as I mentioned. And I'm going to try and keep putting stuff out. I've kind of got my own studio set up a bit now, to a point where I'm confident that I can actually record and mix and release my own music, except for maybe drums. I still like to do drums at a recording studio. But I'm becoming a bit more self-sufficient, which I think a lot of us are kind of learning to do during this time. So I'm hopefully just going to keep putting music out, hopefully like every couple of months, just putting songs out. And then I'll probably start thinking about maybe a bigger release, like an album or an EP again next year sometime. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so from your experience, what kind of advice do you think you would give to any aspiring artists that might be watching this or listening to your music?
I think, and perhaps this is a bit cliche, but don't get hung up on people responding on social media and stuff like that, because I think that's not a really healthy thing as a creative. I think you've just got to really focus on your own work and making it the best and kind of refining that and finding satisfaction in creating. I think finding satisfaction in the creative art form. Of course, like we all want people, when we put stuff out there, we're being vulnerable and we want people to like it. And that's natural and that's not a bad thing at all. But I think if the focus is more on the art itself and less on the I want recognition and stuff like that. That's something that I try and tell myself. It's definitely a hard one to wrestle with. But yeah, and I think lyric writing is a great thing to really delve into. And there's some great books and some great teaching, and it's not mysterious. You can actually practice it. So yeah, I don't know. There's a couple of things.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so do you have, when you were talking about there's a lot of great books out there for lyric writing, do you have any suggestions of what people can start with?
Yes, a really great book that has taught me a lot is it's called Writing Better Lyrics. If you type that into Google, you'll find it. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but he teaches at Berkeley in America, the music school. And a lot of famous songwriters have learned from him. Writing Better Lyrics. And he teaches you how to practice writing, which is really cool. Like you can practice it like you practice an instrument on like a daily basis. So yeah, people can check that out. I recommend it.
Fantastic. Thank you for the recommendation.
No worries.
Is there anything else before we finish up that you'd like to share? Maybe also where people can find you and your music?
Well, people can find it online in all the usual places. I really like Bandcamp. I think a lot of people are turning to Bandcamp at the moment, and every month they waive artist fees and give 100% to the artist. So all my music's on Bandcamp, but yeah, it's everywhere else as well. And you can buy cassettes on Bandcamp too, and I'll post them to you if you want a tape.
Yeah, awesome. Send me a link to that as well, and I'll make sure that I add it so people can find the link to purchase your tape.
Will do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic chat.
Thanks, Kaz. It's really nice talking to you.